Access to medical care is becoming more and more of an issue here in Guam, and it doesn't even matter if you have the ability to pay. It's getting harder to see a doctor, to get an appointment, or to get the specialty care that you need. So I want to show you a growing solution to a growing problem. They're going to go out of their way to help find you a solution. And they've been growing their clinical services. Aside from this place looking and feeling homely, like this is their waiting area. Like, I don't think that people really understand that they do full clinical services here. Like, this is one of their clinical rooms. Look how nice it is. You get your vision exam here. So do you need to see an OBGYN, get family medicine done, internal medicine done? This is all stuff that's done here at the Total Guam Foundation. And just to tell you again, this place is not for profit. This is the psychologist's office. Yes, they have a psychology department. They also do psychiatry. It's an entire mental health department that they have here on top of all the other clinical services that they provide. If you need medical care, if you're having problems getting a doctor, getting an appointment, call the Todu Guam Foundation at 649-TODU or 649-8638. Welcome to this new week. My name is Troy Torres. This is the Sunday News Analysis. It's 3:30 p.m. on Sunday, May 24, 2026. And so these daily news analyses, they start from Monday to Friday at 8 a.m. on the dot. Except when I'm irresponsible and I start like 2 minutes late or 5 minutes late. It's the exception rather than the rule. But on Sundays, because my day is fluid and it revolves around church, I'm not able to make a commitment and say that's going to happen at this time or whatever. Today, it happened in the afternoon. I really could have done this in the morning, but I was lollygagging and I even took a morning nap. Yeah, right. I know. This is the first day of my week for many of you. It's the first day of your week. Welcome to the first day of the week. If it's your rest day, I'm glad you're resting, and I'm very grateful that you've chosen to watch us live or watch the replay on your day of rest. But for the rest of us, happy first of the week. And to the Catholic Church, a happy birthday. This is the 1993rd birthday of the Catholic Church, born on this day, Pentecost, when the Holy Spirit came down and the church was created. So happy birthday to the Catholic Church. There are, okay, so let me just preface this by, because there are three things that I want to talk about today, and two of them have to do with, actually all three of them have to do with the needs of people. One of them has to do with poverty. And so some of you might know, and I've said this on the show before, that I am a registered Democrat, but I have a hard time identifying with Democrat leaders on Guam, especially because they act like anything but. And I'm not saying that it's because of the views they espouse or whatever. It's a lot of it is they say something from one side of their mouth, and then like snakes or like whatever, the vipers or whatever, the other side of their tongue is doing something else or saying something else. And I'll give you a case in point, right? Democrats for the longest time had control of the Guam legislature. The minimum wage remains at $9.25. The Democrats have been in charge of the Guam legislature and Adelup for several years, except for this term where the legislature turned Republican. They never managed to strengthen unions. The Democrats have been in charge for quite some time. Management has gotten stronger. Climates of fear have increased. As a registered Democrat, it pains me to say that under a Republican administration, under the previous Republican administration, things were a whole lot better. And I bring this up because one of the things that I want to talk about today is how this administration has treated the poor, what it has said about how they feel about the poor versus what it actually does. And now I'm going to bring you a taped recording that shows you what they say about the poor behind closed doors, and in the same breath, how a homeless shelter is going to be shut down. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about grievances that are piling against another Democrat, former Speaker Judi Won Pat, now the Superintendent of Education, and her team. The Board of Education has a lot of explaining to do. And then a story that we're beginning to delve into regarding how this administration has procured, without, it seems, the documents don't seem to show any sort of bidding or anything for
$5 million a year worth of reinsurance attached to the annual GovGuam health insurance program. We'll talk about these subjects on the other side of the commercial break. Do stick with us, and thank you so much for joining the Sunday News Analysis.
Good Morning Show with Troy Torres is brought to you by 76 Circle K Guam.
I think the Guam Education Board has some serious explaining to do. We are in a mess that I am almost certain is going to lead to catastrophe over at the Guam Department of Education. And it's because of the Guam Education Board. It's because several people applied to be superintendent of education. The Guam Education Board decided to select the most political, the most aligned with the current administration, the most political, and probably the least experienced and least qualified of everyone who applied for superintendent of education. Instead of going with the people who were tried and true, who through a period of advancement, progress, growth over at the Guam Department of Education, the Guam Education Board went with the one person who was ran out of Guahan Academy Charter School. Couldn't cut it there. So they made her the superintendent of education. Couldn't get reelected by the people of Guam. So here we have Judi Won Pat. And I was, when she was first elected, I was like, maybe she's changed, right? Like maybe she's a different person. It's been a long time since she's been on the public scene. She seemed to be doing all right as the acting or the interim superintendent or whatever that was, right? Since it was her first week, I was already getting the phone calls, the emails, the WhatsApp messages about what was going on over inside GDOE. And I thought, okay, maybe people are just complaining. People just, if you don't like some change, like, someone who's new is going to bring some change, and, maybe it's that, right? So, okay, let me just wait a little bit. And then I started to get more information, all these different things, how people are being treated inside GDOE, how people are being moved around. And then came the time when I started to ask questions about curriculum, about learning, and wouldn't get any response. I was like, okay, maybe they're very busy, And then I would ask things about personnel, and I asked about JP Torres Success Academy. Silence. And if you're not going to respond to the media about the closure of a school, what else are you hiding? And of course, that's when the floodgates open and the information came in about the grievances that have been filed against Judi Won Pat and certain members of her team. And here's the unfortunate part. Part of what's unfortunate about this discussion is I know the identities of at least some of these people. I know the stories that they have, the grievances that they have against certain people, but I cannot share that because this is source material, and if I share that information, it would tend to identify the person, and these people don't want to be known because they are fearful of retaliation from all sorts of places within the stratosphere of the new Won Pat administration over at GDOE. But one of the things was like, I got to have something. Someone's got to give me something so that I can, because I cannot just go with this source said this and this source said this. And I mean, it works sometimes, but this is a big deal, right? So I got a screenshot. And it is a purportedly email communication from a grievant against Judi Won Pat, one of them, to Robert Koss within GDOE. I can't remember the title of Robert Cost's title, but he's like the guy that is supposed to be on the side of employees. And this person wrote, as per Mr. Cost, as per our previous discussion, I would like to move forward with the filing of my grievance toward the superintendent of the Guam Department of Education, Dr. Judi Won Pat. She just has an EDD, guys. You don't have to call her a doctor. Like, I mean, maybe you call someone with a PhD a doctor. You definitely call someone with an MD a doctor. But like, let's just drop all these stupid formalities. They do not need to be called doctor, especially if all they have is an EDD and maybe a PhD. That's actually something. Okay, anyway. Attached is a Word file of documented issues and moments I've had, and then it's information is struck out so that things can get, anyway. With how things are, the only remedies I can seek is that my position can either be changed to fall under another deputy, have the superintendent seek workplace harassment trainings that will allow her to begin learning and understanding how to treat employees and people with respect. Please let me know if there's anything I am missing or is required to begin the grievance process. Now, that alone is alarming, right? Like, this person is suggesting or is alleging that Judi Won Pat, and the inference here is committing workplace harassment and doesn't treat employees well, to the point where this employee is filing a grievance. That's a big deal. Excuse me. Like, you do that when you, oh shoot, son of a gun, I just spilled the water. You do that when, I hope there's no electric anything here. You do that when you've had it. You do that when you don't have much more room for recourse. And so this person felt this way. And apparently there's others, because Robert Cost wrote back to this person, just letting you know that I have received your complaint and I am working on the case. I will be reaching to you soon with an action plan and write-up. FYI, your timing is excellent because we have 3 other employees that are doing the same. This creates an undeniable pattern of abuse and makes a very convincing case in your favor. My friends, if what Robert Cost is saying in this email is correct, there are at least 4 grievances against superintendent as of the unknown date of this email. 4 grievances, 1, 2, 3, 4, against the new superintendent of education, who only became the superintendent when Eric Swanson vacated his position on December 31. She has only been superintendent for less than 6 months. And already there's 4 grievances against her. And she's not the only one. According to sources, there are members of her management team against whom grievances have been filed for things like hostile work environments. Something is happening over at GDOE. We see it already. It's manifesting itself with the priorities of the department being 1, a big pay raise for Judi Won Pat, and 2, shutting down a school, and then rumors of like all these different southern schools that are going to be shut down that have not been verified. We see it in the lack of transparency being displayed by Judi Won Pat and her team, and none of us should be surprised. Honestly, we shouldn't be surprised because this is Judi Won Pat, who is the same person. Like, we've seen this before when she was the Speaker of the Legislature, when she was a senator, when she became part of this governor's administration. We saw this over at Guahan Academy Charter School. This is not a changed person. If anything, this is a person whose qualities have only been enhanced with the amount of power that this Board of Education has given her. And my friends, make no mistake, we shouldn't be piling it on Judi Won Pat and her management team. This is the board's fault. This is absolutely and squarely the fault of the Guam Education Board and the politics that they played so that they gave us a superintendent, the most highly paid there ever was, whose sole achievement so far has been closing down a school and being grieved against on allegations of hostile work environments and workplace harassment and not treating employees well. Blame the Board of Education. When we come back from the commercial break, we're going to talk about how this administration truly feels about homeless people, and it's a sad thing to behold. Stick with us. Welcome back to the show. It is now 3:45 p.m. on Sunday, May 24, 2026. And during the break, I got the mop. I'm afraid that this thing is going to get to the electrical circuit, and I'm going to be fried and electrocuted right in front of you because I spilled my water because I'm an idiot. Anyway, sorry, just mopping that up. Let me start with saying something positive. There is an Office of Homelessness and Poverty Prevention that Governor Lulian Guerrero started in her office. And then something happened and I think that she got into some squabble with the legislature regarding financing. And then she had to move the office to become a division of the Department of Public Health and Social Services. That Office of that Homeless Coalition or whatever it's called, it's under the administration. It has people in it like Stephanie Flores, Rob San Augustine, Mayor Robert Hoffman. Like those people, they do really great work. Do not get me wrong. These are people who spring into action for those who are homeless and those who are on the precipice, those who have housing insecurity, who are on the precipice of becoming homeless. And I know this to be a fact because I have called Stephanie on a couple of occasions to help a couple of people. And this one of them was even on a Sunday. And she sprang into action, as did Mayor Robert Hoffman, Teresa Arreola. And so I know that office works. Now, I know that office is doing great work. Whether that office is working to solve the homelessness problem at a rate that people are satisfied with, that's a whole other discussion. So I just wanted to, at the very least, give those people that credit before I talk about this. Now, we know, because we're not stupid, that this administration has had many opportunities and a lot of funding and a lot of time to focus on things that we would assume would be the priority of the government, especially of a Democrat administration. Things involving our housing security, our financial security, the economy as it relates to regular homes, your home, my home, and not the homes of the bigwigs. We know from observing this administration for the past 8 years that this administration has been primarily concerned with the status of the elite and how much money they get through contracts. And if you are supporting them, then you're part of their system of cronyism and all of that stuff, right? We just saw the whole Courts Act thing, right? Which is something that we're going to continue on. But what they say, what they do, we see what they do, right? And some of us are like, hey, all of us see the same thing. How can any of you support this administration in continuing to do this sort of thing, right? And we're like, you must be part of, the deal that they've got going on, right? Because we see all this stuff happening, but what they say is a totally different story, completely different, right? Unless, of course, you're caught on tape saying exactly what these people really mean about the poor, the homeless, those facing housing insecurity. And I'm talking about everyone who struggles to pay rent or the mortgage, those without transportation. And there's a lot of us without transportation. There are a lot of people who are struggling, having everything to do with the economy that we entrusted this administration to do something about. But instead, they celebrate gains that are only going to the top 1%. And they consider that as economic development when the rest of us are not being developed whatsoever by it. And then they laugh at us behind closed doors when they think nobody is ever going to hear the tape. Let's play it.
Take relocation well.
I just got
Family's gone back.
invited to a
I want to see the
public hearing. There's a bill
wherever they're gonna
that
buy a house.
gives the authorization to Public Works to determine the number. Yeah, I'm even laughing already. It says the authority to determine the number of parking spots for a homeless facility.
If they're homeless, they're probably carless too.
I'm just serious. What? Because they don't have cars, right? I don't know. You can say all kinds of jokes with that for your bill, right? I was like, where did this come from?
time wasting.
And the problem
Maybe
is,
they have more time.
they're not even going to go to those facilities. You know, the one we're just about done with in Anigua? I just don't see them going there. There's too many rules. And that's why they're homeless, because they don't want rules.
Yeah. I mean, there's only like 24, so you might get 24 there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's
I don't know, I hope so. I you know, trust me, I want to take them off the streets and off their encampments, because our guys have to clean up those encampments, and it is not a pretty sight.
That's pretty good.
Blabba. Yeah. So yeah, when I saw that bill, we're gonna be in charge of the number of parking spots in a homeless facilities. I mean, the jokes you could do with that one.
So, which bright person is sponsoring that?
So the bright person that sponsored that legislation, and that you heard that last voice, that was Ed Byrne, the director of administration, saying, well, which bright person sponsored that? Talking about the bill that Vince Ariola was making fun of. Vince Ariola being the director of public works. I believe he's on that homeless coalition, by the way. At least his position is. I need to double check that. Anyway, so the administration officials, they're having this hearty laugh, right, at the expense of homeless people. And we'll talk about that in a second. But the bright person who sponsored that bill, Bill 159, is actually Vice Speaker Tony Atta. And let's not even discuss all how Vince Ariola had the homeless situation all wrong. Like, he has no idea, according to what he said in that clip that he never thought would see the light of day, exactly what leads to homelessness and what keeps people unhoused. It's so much more than the jokes that he made. So on top of him being wrong about that, he was also wrong about the bill. The bill actually gave him as the director of public works, discretion, because there's this whole building code that needs to be followed, and in the construction or in the renovation of this homeless shelter, you know, it didn't make sense to have that many parking stalls according to the building code because of the number of people. It's not like a regular place for consumers. There are many homeless people who do not have cars, and you know, just to educate Vince Ariola, there are a lot of homeless people who have cars, and that's all they have, and whatever's inside the cars, that's all of their belongings, because they don't have a home, and thankfully their car still works. And so, you know, and it's not the safest place to sleep, because you have to sleep in a parking lot or in a dark corner somewhere. You don't have a property, and that's why these homeless shelters, especially for families, are important, right? Anyway, so he didn't even get the bill right. But here's the ultimate irony. That was August 29, 2025 is when that recording supposedly took place. Just a few days later, because you heard him talk, you know, I was invited to a public hearing, and I scoured the public hearing. I didn't see Vince Ariola there. But just a few days later, on September 8, 2025, the legislature held a public hearing on that bill. And there were government officials who testified, and they testified in favor of the bill. And they discussed how the bill was necessary. And among the people who did testify in favor of the bill and told senators how necessary it was the director of public health and social services, under which the Office of Homelessness and Poverty Prevention falls. And the director of public health and social services is Therese Ariola, the wife of Vince Ariola, who was making fun of the homeless people and that bill. Here's that.
So you should just go ahead and read it into the record. Thank you.
This is testimony in support of Bill 159-38, authored by yourself. Hafaday, Chairman Atta, members of the 38th Guam Legislature, my name is Teresa Ariola, the Director of Public Health and Social Services. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony in support of Bill 159-38, an act to add a new paragraph O to subsection 61531 of Chapter 61, Title 21, Guam Code annotated, relative to granting the Department of Public Works to determine the minimum number of parking spaces required for homeless shelters. This legislation is proposed to allow DPW to address the parking requirements on a case-by-case basis for operations such as shelters for the unhoused. Chapter 61 of Title 21 makes considerations for places of business where parking is meant to accommodate customers and clientele who frequent a business where flow-through traffic must be accommodated with adequate spaces. In the case of the homeless shelter being operated for street homeless individuals needing safe haven on a nightly basis, the majority of this population will not own or operate vehicles. The users of the homeless shelter are expected to walk to the shelter, check in, then again leave on foot once the sheltering has been completed every morning. The priority for the shelter will be street homeless, individuals who are sleeping, camping in public or privately owned spaces without express authorization to be there by the property owner. In these cases, the homeless shelter will be the government of Guam's supplied option for street homeless individuals to receive shelter for the night and be offered services to address their circumstances. Individuals will either travel by foot to the facility or be transported, if available, and dropped to the shelter facility. A similar example would be the Ministry to the Homeless Soup Kitchen in Hagåtña, formerly known as Kamalin Karadat. They operate feeding on a daily basis, and their clients are walk-up individuals who receive food and disperse once received. There are no required minimum parking spaces based on the building's function, size, or consumer traffic while performing its services or operations. Therefore, it is requested that a variance be considered or provisions be made for the operation of a facility which does not anticipate significant automobile traffic, flow-through or extended parking to carry out its intended sheltering operations. The building would otherwise be compliant with parking space requirements for staff and persons with disability.
The faces of the administration, huh? Just here's a news item. It's something that I'm going to publish today. The administration, the Director of Public Health, very recently sent a letter to Catholic Social Services by June 30. CSS has to vacate GUMA San Jose. The 70 people who receive housing assistance services because they are homeless. Some of them need dialysis. Some of them are kids. There's all these different needs that people have. They will be displaced because the government of Guam will be coming in, as Cape Taos Catholic Social Services will be coming in to rehabilitate the place. At least that's according to a letter that Teresa Ariola sent to Catholic Social Services, that rehabilitation apparently will begin on July 1. According to Teresa Ariola, because I asked, I was like, hey, is anything going to happen? Like, what's going to happen to these 70 and to anyone who might need these services? And she said that the Office of Homelessness and Poverty Prevention will be coming in to provide services for these people. Nobody will be put on the street, she said. Everybody who needs who is getting whatever services over at GUMA San Jose through Catholic Social Services will be getting the services through Office of Homelessness and Poverty Prevention. I don't know what this does for the whatever rents or whatever compensation Catholic Social Services was getting, or what's going to happen to the employees. But apparently this, in the letter from Teresa Ariola, this was all done in conjunction with the Archbishop. So I don't know what's going to happen with all that, but there's some consternation. And, if I'm being honest here, after hearing how Vince Ariola and others in the administration felt about homeless people, I don't know that I trust that these homeless people are going to be cared for, but I hope so. I hope what Teresa Ariola has told me, and she's never given me a reason to believe that she is not telling the truth. So, at least there's that. I hope what she said is true and that these people will not be displaced and that there is not an additional burden that has been placed on them because of this new situation. When we come back from the other side of the commercial break, I'll bring you our first cut at our look at documents showing that the Department of Administration got the taxpayers to spend like more than $5 million a year on a reinsurance program that looks like it never, ever went out to bid. We'll talk about that on the other side of this commercial break. Stick with us.
AutoSpot is extending our overstock sell-off with the hottest deals on island, like our 2025 GMC Canyon with $4,000 off. Or slide into a brand new Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross, starting at just $24,995. September is your chance to drive big and save even bigger. Visit us today or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com or call 478-AUTO. Guam AutoSpot, where the savings never stop.
This stuff's hitting the spot.
Welcome back. Every time I look at that commercial, I want to eat extra crispy fried drumstick with mashed potatoes, red rice, and coleslaw. Now I want to go to KFC. Welcome back to the show. It is 4:01 p.m. on Sunday, May 24, 2026. This segment's not going to be long because I'm still in the middle of figuring everything out. But at least from what I've seen so far, there's something a bit concerning and something that's worth our look that I wanted to tell you about. And it has to do, okay, so remember a few years ago, I think it was at the time Speaker Tina Muñoz Barnes, she introduced a bill that transitioned the government. Every year, the government of Guam was procuring insurance through the annual insurance contract. Remember? And then, whether it was a multi-party or a multi-provider or a single provider, it would go out on RFP or whatever, and Select Care or Take Care or Net Care or whoever would get the contract, right? Remember that? So, wait, hold on. I just need to get, there we go. Tina Muñoz Barnes changed that to a self-insurance program, and the governor signed it into law and all that stuff, right? So I don't know if it started in fiscal year 23. I think it was fiscal year 23 it started. Anyway, so the government ran into a snag. When it first started, it was covering, it would pay the process claims, the eligible claims for everyone, right? And that included the people who had these surgeries or these therapies within a given year that required a lot of money, like you can conceivably like ring up a $2 million medical bill in 1 year, or a $565,221 medical bill. And so the government started to look, according to these documents, sometime in fiscal year 2024, in fiscal year 23 for fiscal year 24, started to look for something called reinsurance. And this is where the government would pay an additional premium so that coverage above a certain amount, so coverage above $200,000 claim or a $500,000 claim or a $1 million claim or something, would be covered by another insurance agent. Apparently, this is common in the insurance industry. And using the excuse or reason, one of them, that the government is not allowed to, because the government is not an insurance broker itself, it cannot go and get reinsurance. That's according to statements by the government and some of these documents, they had to go through the insurance agency that had won the bid, and that was Calvo Select Care. For Calvo Select Care to procure a reinsurance agent, but the money would flow through Calvo Select Care. It wouldn't go from GovGuam to the reinsurance agent. It would go from GovGuam to Calvo Select Care, then to the reinsurance agent. Here's the thing. It's more than $5 million a year. It wasn't bid out. There was no, yeah. And so fishy kind of stuff. I'm not saying anything wrong was done, at least yet, but it is something that we're looking at, and I wanted to break that news here on Kandit so you understand that, it might be something that we take our time with. We're still on the Cortex stuff. Matter of fact, if I'm not that tired and I don't take a nap, we'll have a Troy Torres show tonight, and I'm going to talk about the 16 mil for 26 and the 16 mil for fiscal year 27 that they talked about in those taped recordings where they were making fun of poor people, and talk more about, how fishy this whole deal looks with Cortex. For Kandid News, I'm Troy Torres. If I have a show tonight, it'll be at 7:30 p.m. You can join me there. I appreciate you joining me live or for the replay of the Sunday news analysis. God bless you all.